Hello and welcome to another episode of Upward Trajectory. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, I'm so happy to have on the program with us Helen Ginman, and coming all the way from the UK. Thank you so much for joining us, Helen, and welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
And today we are going to be talking about a very interesting subject and something that's very relevant to today, and that is anxiety and depression. And with this whole COVID-19 shutdown and pandemic, I think that more than ever, we need to discuss this, we need to get this out there, and we need to find tools to cope, because we don't know how long this is going to last. We don't know how much longer it's going to affect our world and our reality and our socialization and all the things we want to get back to. But we need to be able to have coping mechanisms, and we can't go off the deep end. We need to be able to stay in a mentally healthy place. So, Helen, I know that you have a lot to say on this subject. So with that in mind, I'd like to kind of hand it over to you, and if you could share part of your story with the audience.
Yeah, so I mean, you're rightly so. COVID-19 has tested us in more ways than one, and certainly from a mental health and well-being perspective, there's a very real concern right now that people are going to be struggling, with their mental health, and I'm so pleased to be here and be able to kind of raise the awareness around that topic. And for me, I've had my own personal journey with poor mental health from a very early age. I suffered from anxiety attacks at the age of 11. I really struggled growing up in that secondary school period of time, moving into your teenager years, and I also suffered from depression. And whilst I was able to get through my anxiety, and I went through a lot of treatment to be able to do that, a lot of holistic treatment and natural therapies, what was left was depression, unfortunately, and I struggled for a good number of years with fighting that depression, and it culminated in 2 attempts at taking my own life, and I survived. I'm a suicide survivor in that respect, and throughout my life I have suffered from poor mental health. So for me, being a part of raising awareness and helping people to find the right support is a real critical part of what I do now, and why I'm so pleased to be able to have the forum and the voice to be able to do that.
Yeah, wow. So it's a very compelling story, and we're so glad that you're here and that you're now making a difference in other people's lives. So this started for you very early, at age of 11. That's extremely young, extremely early. And I just read a study last week that 1 in 4 young adults and adolescents have contemplated taking their own life. And that is a huge number. And that's very, very concerning. And I know that this is, it's creeping younger and younger and younger. And I know there's parents out there, there might even be kids out there that are listening to this right now and wanting to know, what do you do? What are the early signs that you need to watch for before it gets to the point where it's at a critical state? Do you have any advice?
Yeah, I mean, 1 in 4, and it's such a tough statistic to read. And I always say to people, all of us know somebody that's suffering from poor mental health in one way or another. We always know somebody, whether that's in the past or whether that's right now, and we're all impacted by mental health in one way or another. And actually, every 40 seconds globally, all over the world, there is somebody taking their own life that feels like the only way to end their suffering is to do the final act. And that every 40 seconds, and
wow.
And I think the statistic is every 2 to 3 seconds somebody's attempting to take their life or thinking about taking their life. So it's a real threat to our society is people feeling like their only way out is to do this. From a signs and symptoms perspective, it's really important that we recognize where we might be feeling down for a longer period of time. Specific events that happen in our life might cause us to feel demotivated, and we all have down days, if you like. There are always moments in our life where we are feeling a little bit low, but really we're looking for the signs of where we're seeing regular occasions where we're feeling bad, where we're feeling low, where we're feeling like we want to give up on the world, where it's actually physically affecting how we operate in a given day. So that's a real clear sign that something else is going on for us. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to be somebody that opts to take our own life. It just means that we need to recognize that we might be struggling, and that will be the trigger point for us to go in and source some support or source some help and guidance, or to talk to somebody that says, look, I've been feeling really bad for the last few days, or I've been having panic attacks, or I've got heart palpitations, or I'm panicking each morning. I don't want to get out of bed every day. I'm struggling to be able to do kind of the normal chores around the house. They're all signs that that our body and our mind is saying, look, something's going on for us, and we need to think about what that is and what we need to do.
Wow. Yeah. So you're even saying after maybe a week of feeling like this, because I know some people say, after a few months, but that seems like a very long time to feel in that state of being down and just not feeling yourself and feeling, like you said, like there's more bad than there is good.
Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be things that happen in our life that's going to affect us. We're going to lose loved ones around us, and we're going to go through periods of grief, and we're going to have to go through that bereavement process, and we're going to feel, different emotions throughout that process. There'll be divorces that perhaps we have to go through. There'll be losses of jobs that we have to contend with. There'll be different events and situations that trigger different responses to us. And of course, for a while we may well feel like, we're struggling with life, but certainly, if you're going for a few days and you're not getting yourself out of that state of mind, you need to be thinking about what you can do. That doesn't mean you have to go to the GP and go on medication or anything like that. It doesn't mean you have to go to the hospital. It just means that it's your mind and your body saying, I'm not okay at the moment, and how can I help myself be a little bit more okay?
Right. And I know we discussed at the beginning that the whole COVID-19 situation and the pandemic has really gotten people in a bad place mentally. And
Yeah.
I'm just curious, have you heard from a lot more people that are really having a hard time coping with this situation? And any suggestions on what to do to kind of start climbing out of that negative mindset?
Yeah, I mean, in the UK yesterday, actually, funny enough, there was a new report that had been released saying that depression was on the rise as a result of COVID. So, we've already got the data now telling us that that's happening, particularly in the UK. It's going to be happening, all over the world, that people have been suffering from poor mental health because we've been restricted from our social interactions. We've not been able to have that physical interaction as much as we have. Some of us haven't been able to go to our jobs. Some of us have lost our jobs as a result of those types of things. People have lost loved ones as a result of this disease. There's a lot of anger, a lot of frustration. So, people are going to be going through different experiences. And the first thing to acknowledge is that perhaps not every person's experience is going to be the same as somebody else's. But you really need to think about what can you do to invest in your own self-well-being. So is it physical exercise? Is it mindfulness? Is it setting boundaries for your working life if you're working from home? So that you have a specific start time that you start your day, specific end time where you finish. So your mind knows that it doesn't have to carry on working, and you don't have this kind of work creep into your life whilst you're working from home. So there's different strategies that people can deploy depending on where they are. Keep the social relationships going. That's really important. And although a huge amount of those are now being done virtually via Zoom and via other mechanisms, actually they provide a huge amount of positive support for us for those relationships. So it's really important that we leverage those that we've got available to us and use the time to be able to spend time with those loved ones as best we can, because they are a tremendous support for us.
Yes, absolutely. And I think one of the hardest sectors, like we mentioned, is the younger kids, the adolescents that are they're not able to make that shift to virtual and to get that same level of socialization and feeling like they need. And I think that that's just been really, really hard on them. Is there anything that beyond what you just mentioned, that you would suggest to try and counteract that missing link?
Yeah, I mean, look, the younger generation are going through a hell of a time at the moment, least of all because they're navigating their new starts in life, perhaps graduating from school and doing those type of things, as well as dealing with the usual teenager problems that we face when we're that age. So look, social media can be a really positive thing, but bear in mind that sometimes it can also be a negative thing, and it can really affect our self-esteem. So I would always have a limit on how much you spend on social media, for your own sanity, because you can get drawn into some of the negativity and things like that. Yes, it provides a social platform. Yes, it provides an opportunity to connect with people, but we all need to have some boundaries in place to be able to do that. Gaming is quite a good positive way. If it's used properly, you can use gaming as a way of being able to connect to other people and being able to support those things, because most teenagers today are attached to the phone, attached to the social media. So if you can find a way to bring in the interaction through that way, that's great. But don't underestimate the value of things away from technology. Things like doing crafts, doing creative activities, things like painting, things like drawing. It might be creative writing. We've all got that creativity in with us. It might be playing music, it might be creating new music, or those types of things can be really valuable to children and younger generation, and provide a real sense of purpose. And that's what we need for our well-being, is having that sense of purpose and feeling valued. And actually that creative space that we enable can help to create that self-esteem, that help create that self-belief.
Yes, and I love that you touched on the sense of purpose, because I think that drives so much positive. What you find something that is purpose driven and that you're making a difference some which way, I think that correlates into a passion, and then you become helping others, and it's this positive feedback loop that you get so much more than you give.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it's just it's such a positive thing that it snowballs in a really good way.
Absolutely. And if you're doing those types of things, you're already embracing mindfulness, because you're right there in the present moment. You're right connecting with what's going on in the world. You're not worrying about what's been, you're not worrying about what's coming. So it ticks lots of boxes in terms of giving that sense of purpose, in creating positive well-being, helping to support positive mental health, giving us a way forward, perhaps into a new snowballing effect of a new opportunity and a new future.
Yes, absolutely. So back to you and what you're doing now. So you came out of this and you realized that you had gone through it for a reason, correct?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
and
definitely.
then, so what are you doing now? What is it that you're doing now to kind of identify and help other people who are going through similar plights that you went through?
I mean, so now I'm helping companies and individuals to create choice when people are struggling with poor mental health. Often we feel like when we're struggling, there might not be nowhere to turn, or if there is somewhere to turn, often it involves medication or drugs as a way of being able to kind of get yourself through those types of things, all prescribed, but as a way of being able to support yourself. But actually there is so much available to us already that is at our fingertips that we can use to help kind of us through those difficult moments, to help promote positive well-being. So help companies realize what those opportunities are, to help create that choice and the diversity for people as well as individuals in the community. So where people are struggling, I can help support them in finding different ways in which it works for them as individuals, because poor mental health affects us all very, very differently. So too will how we recover through it, and each journey that we go through that recovery process is going to be different, and it's going to look and feel differently. Some people find running as a really great thing to do. I work with somebody who wanted to do some physical activity and found running to be a real valuable tool in helping them through depression, and they had lost one of their children, unfortunately, and as a way of being able to progress them through those feelings, they chose running. And not only did it give them physical benefits, it of course gave them mental health benefits. So I don't do running, I can't do running, it's not for me, but for some people it will work. So, and that's the point, is being able to share the variety and diversity of choice when it comes to those things, and for people to realize how valuable they can be to helping them through difficult times.
Yeah, so you make a great point. Running is my go-to as well. And I sometimes just get in 10 minutes, and even a brisk walk. I'll even get outside for a brisk walk, and I feel the endorphins. I feel that serotonin surge, and it's just getting that heart rate up just a little bit, and you'll feel that results. And it's addictive, I've got to say. It definitely counteracts all the negative. But my next question was going to be, for you, if somebody just needs just a place to start. So they're realizing that, yes, I'm in a down space. I'm very anxious right now, or I'm feeling depressed. And what would be the first steps that you'd recommend for them to start?
So look, the first step for me, if you're starting to feel a little bit anxious, if you're starting to feel a little bit down, the first thing I would do is try to write those things down, because being able to connect with your emotions and being able to connect with actually what's happening might be able to find some clarity in what's happening for you, and that might then say to you, okay, I need to do something, and it might spur you on to taking the next step. Of course, if it's more serious and you're thinking of taking your own life, or there are feelings of self-harm involved, or it is really crippling you being able to get out of bed and things like that, you really need to contact some professional support initially for them to do an assessment and to work out what might be the best thing for you.
Yeah.
Now that might well be just through natural therapy, it might be through acupuncture, it might be through reflexology, it might be through lots of different things, but you need to have that professional support and guidance if you are in that state. But certainly, if you're having those mild anxiety feelings, start by writing it down. It might give some indication and some clarity of your thought process. And I would look online at looking at mindfulness, and I would look at physical activity as two core ways to be thinking about how that might support you throughout your kind of mild symptoms of anxiety.
Yes, and I just want to reiterate what you just said. If you're feeling depressed and you're feeling down and you may even be feeling a tad bit suicidal, you need to reach out and you need to share and ask for help. Regardless who it is, if it's a parent, if it's a friend, if it's a hotline, you just need help and you need to reach out. So I just wanted to re-emphasize that. It's so important.
Talking is one of the most beneficial things that you can do when you're struggling with poor mental health.
Absolutely. We're so connected.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, the stigma attached to poor mental health sometimes means that it's so difficult to find somebody to talk to, or fear of what might happen if you do, particularly in the workplace. If you say to somebody you're struggling, they might not think you're capable of doing your job, but poor mental health doesn't affect your capability. It might affect your capacity for a period of time, and usually a defined period of time, but it certainly doesn't affect your capability. You still have all the training that you've always done, you still have all that experience that you've always done in your role, but there is still a huge amount of stigma attached to poor mental health, which makes it difficult to talk. But
yes.
Talking is always going to be the best thing that somebody can do. And I hope, by raising an awareness and people talking about it more, and it being more, more accessible on different levels, people feel like it's okay to raise their hand and say, look, I'm struggling and I need.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just wanted to also kind of say that, if there's one shining light here, it's that this is talked about more than ever now, and it's mainstream more than it's ever been. And I think that is such a positive, because this is so normal. Everybody at one point or another in their life deals with this. Everybody. I've not talked to one person who's not had an episode of anxiety, depression, or both, and multiple times even. And I think that we need to come over that stigma and just get past that, because every single person deals with this at one point or another in their life. And it's just finding those coping tools and those mechanisms that we need that work for us. And it's just, sometimes it's trial and error, but I have loved having you on the show, Helen. Thank you so much. And just out of curiosity, if somebody is trying to reach you and maybe would like to find out more about what you do, how would they best reach you?
So the best way to reach me is through my website, which is www.youandIwellbeing.co.uk.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and being on the show. It's been wonderful, and it's been great to raise more awareness about the mental health situation right now more than ever.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And please join us again for another episode of Upward Trajectory soon. Thank you so much.